Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to today's Search Engine Journal webinar. I hope that everybody is having a great whatever time of day. Regardless, we're thrilled to have each and every one of you here with us. And I'm very happy today to be joined by Patrick Reinhardt, the VP of Customer Success at Conductor. And we are going to be talking about ending the silo mentality and increasing business agility. Who doesn't love that? Because communication, it is a funny thing, isn't it? Especially in this hybrid world in which we find ourselves all living, because there are misunderstandings, there's overlap, and all of that can lead to lost opportunities. And SEO, no exception to that. But that's why we're all here today, right? So that we can learn how to break down silos between teams and bring them together to help you catch SEO issues early. And Patrick is going to share some actionable ideas that your company can quickly adapt for long-term sustainable success. And just to let you all know, I am Amanda Zantel-Weiner, the editor-in-chief of the Search Engine Journal. Feel free to refer to me as AZW, ZW, whatever you want to call me, and I'm going to be your moderator today. And next, use the hashtag SEJ webinars, hashtag SEJ webinars, to share any cool tidbits from today's learnings on the social media channel of your choice. My favorite is Twitter, but go ahead and use yours. And so let's get more formally introduced to our guests. Patrick, we're so excited to have you here with us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Conductor?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everyone, and thank you so much for joining the webinar today. My name is Pat Reinhardt, and as was stated before, I'm the VP of Digital Strategies at Conductor. I have been in SEO for about 20 years, but have been in the Conductor ecosystem for about 13 years, 5 years as an employee, 7 years as a, 7, 8 years as a customer, 5 years and 7 years as a employee. And what we are is, we're an enterprise level, SEO platform, right? Like we're here to help you find all of the insights, help you tell the stories with really easy to use and easily accessible visuals that help folks that both know SEO really well, decipher and figure out what to do next, but also non-SEO folks like content people, web folks, and other executives, understand and help you teach them and tell the story about what's happening in the industry and what they should be doing next to, to continue to grow and invest in the campaign. So that's a little bit about me and about Conductor.
Amazing. And I want to apologize for being a bit overly formal by addressing you as Patrick instead of Pat. I will never make that mistake again, never. But yes, moving right along. First, if any of y'all out there experience any technical difficulties, please use the chat box to let us know. There are separate tabs for question and questions, because you might have more than one, and chat. So take a second to get familiar with those functions in the top right of your screen. Well, this is my top right. I don't know what side it's on if you're looking at me. You can upvote questions if you see something you'd like to make sure we ask, and we'll answer as many of them as we can at the end of the presentation. There is also, of course, a closed captioning option. Just click the little CC in the top right corner as well. And we will do our best throughout to link to any resources or tools in the chat. But if we miss one, feel free to ask. We'll also be including some resources in the recap email that you'll be receiving. After the webinar, we ask if you can stick around for a very short survey. It takes 2 minutes or less. And that information helps us gauge what works and how we can make SEJ webinars more useful for you. I'm still kind of new here. I've only been here for 3 months. So please tell me how we can make everything awesome for you. And lastly, you will receive the full recording of today's SEJ webinar later today. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. Okay, Pat, I think that is enough from me. So without further delay, let us get into it. Patrick, I'll be back in the Q&A, but the floor is yours.
Thanks so much. And everyone, again, thank you so much for joining me today. And I'm really excited to talk about this. This is actually one of my favorite topics. At Conductor and really in my career, one of my biggest charges has been to make SEO more accessible to more people. And one of the biggest hurdles to that, of course, are, how companies, typically structure their teams, which are very much in silos. So again, just moving on. Hi, again, I'm Pat. Quick introduction again for me, VP Customer Success, 20 years in SEO. But a very important detail that I left out before, I'm a very big Bitmoji enthusiast. So you're going to see a little cartoon version of me throughout this presentation, just to prepare for that. Any and all comments, always welcome. And also ask questions along the way. I love keeping things conversational. While I'll go through the presentation, we'll do questions at the end. If something is pertinent as we're talking, I will certainly address it. But let's get into it, right? When you look at your SEO program, or really just companies in general, what are the three teams that you really need to have, rocking and rolling to make your campaign good, right? What you need: your SEO team, you need your content team, and you need your web team, right? The people that are giving the recommendations, creating the content, and then ultimately implementing it onto your site, right? And that's really how we should look at it, right? Now, from there, how should all of this work, right? Content ideas and optimizations, and go to the content team and you talk about it, and then ultimately they get implemented, right? Wouldn't that be the ideal situation? Same thing goes with technical fixes, right? Technical fixes, the SEO figures them out, sends it to the web team, and then the web team implements that onto the site, right? Now, even though this is an ideal state, we all know this isn't how it works. We know it doesn't work, because let's take it like, what does a typical office look like, right? Why? Because the web team's sitting over here, the content team's sitting over here, and the SEO team is usually sitting in this little broom closet over here where they've moved the desk over and moved a couple of utensils aside and put a small computer for us. And from that standpoint, what happens there is that no one talks to one another, right? And that really leads to people in the web team doing their work in their own little bubble, the people in the content team doing their work in their own little bubble, and of course the SEO team kind of coming around and sweeping up and kind of cleaning up after everything and getting things done after the fact and having a very hard time, right? So from that standpoint, when you think about silos, that's really what it's about, right? No one really talks to each other, and at most, especially enterprise companies that are large and somewhat convoluted at times, it's really hard to get these teams working together, or for the SEO folks to get the other two teams to care. Why should I care about this, right? And really, what does that lead to, right? It leads to the SEO team not getting any buy-in, can't get anything implemented. And a lot of the times, that's why you see a lot of turnover in SEO teams, right? Because simply put, a lot of us get frustrated, right? And you leave, and you start to see the campaign just as constantly is in the stutter start, right? And then the content team, they're creating content that's not informed by search. So they're just kind of they're just kind of creating stuff, right? They're just kind of creating stuff, and they're putting it on the site, and they don't know if it's good or bad. They're just trying to hit, they're just going to hit their goals. And the web team's just knocking out other projects, right? They're typically working off a system like Jira. They're just hitting other tickets, and they're just getting things done, right? And no one's talking to one another. And this process is just so broken, right? And it's really annoying. And the funny thing about it is that we all know it's true that SEO is what? SEO is truly a team sport, right? It's really a team sport. The problem is that not everyone knows they're on the team. And that's another big problem, is that, as folks that own the SEO program, it is our job to educate folks and let them know that they are part of this team. And really, anyone that touches the site is doing SEO, right? Anyone that is on the site, anyone that is implementing, creating content for the site, they're impacting the organic search campaign. And from that standpoint, we need to let everyone know that they're on this team with us. But most of the time, that simply isn't happening, because the SEO team is just having a hard time getting buy-in, getting a hard time getting to the teams, hard time talking to their leaders. And from that standpoint, that's where you run into the same problem over and over, that the campaign just doesn't grow, right? And from there, what happens, right? People, the executives, come to the SEO person and they say, hey, this stuff takes too long. I don't really know if I want to invest in this. You told me XYZ when we hired you, and we really haven't seen anything. And what we have to do as the person that owns the program, we have to say that's actually not the right way to look at it, right? The right way to look at it is that SEO doesn't take too long. We, as an organization, take too long. And from that standpoint, I have had this, somewhat, come to Jesus, talk with a lot of executives at a lot of big companies where, they say that, hey, we're cutting investment in organic. We're going to put it into paid. We invested in this once. We were burned by an agency. We gave money and we didn't see any results for 12 months or any real results for 12 months. And I just don't believe in this, right? And I can tell you that every time I meet with these types of executives, it's always the same story. And it's usually that story that, hey, this is just taking too long, right? And that's, again, not really the right way to look at it, because most organizations, especially larger organizations, it's an internal problem. It's not the SEO's fault. I mean, the SEO certainly shares some blame there because, again, their job is to evangelize and to educate and to get those meetings with those leaders on those other teams to make sure that this connective tissue starts to get built, right? But the problem is that if you don't have buy-in from the top, it's just the bottom's going to fall out at some point. And really what that comes down to is not just saying like, hey, our rankings are up or down, or, we acquired this many links, or we did XYZ. They don't want to hear about the specifics, right? They want to hear that, hey, it's not the program that's broken, it's us as an organization. And we need your buy-in to put pressure on people within the organization to make sure that they pay attention to this. Because again, most of the time, you have like half of your revenue coming in through organic, and a lot of executives don't even recognize that. But this is a common problem. This is such a common problem. And honestly, if this sounds familiar, this is you. You are a wilted plant. Look how sad this plant is, right? And what does this represent as a company? It represents flat growth, right? Folks that can't get these teams working with one another and can't get SEO programs to become more systematic and to become really part of the culture. Like, SEO needs to become a cultural part of the team and of the company for it to be successful, because it requires so many people to be involved, right? And unfortunately, if you have silos equal flat growth. And I gotta be honest with you, and this is not good, and I know that most of the companies that, especially when they first start working at Conductor, and to no fault of the people that we're talking to necessarily, but it really comes down to, this is such a common situation, right? And honestly, if you're a leader listening to this and you're allowing this to happen, let's say this is happening and you're not doing anything about it, I'm sorry to say, but you're irresponsible. There is money floating out the door of huge companies that aren't investing in organic. And a lot of it comes from just people talking to one another and working together. So if you're a leader out there and this sounds familiar to you, and everything that I just went to sounds familiar to you, I'm sorry to say that you're being irresponsible about this program, and you need to take it seriously and really think and look in the mirror and say, what kind of organization do we want to be, right? Because at the end of the day, you really need to take organic search serious to make it work, because it's a lot of work. And you really should be this. Everyone should be this. Look how happy this plant is, right? And what does this plant represent? It represents high growth. These are companies that have built infrastructure around organic. They use technology for organic. They hire teams, not half a person or someone's arm or half a foot that takes care of SEO. They have a whole person or multiple people that owns the SEO program. And they are the ones that are winning. They are the ones. And they're the ones that the teams are listening to the SEO team. The content team is informed by organic and that search data, and the web team is on board with implementing things onto the site for SEO purposes every single sprint. And there's a lot that goes into that, and it's not easy to build, but no silos equals high growth. And this is what everyone should strive to be. Now, what are some tangible differences between these two types of companies, right? One, let's just take basics, right? A lot of it comes back down to basics. It's how long does it take you to publish a new web page? And we went out at Conductor and talked to hundreds of customers, and we asked them these same questions. And on average, when we saw high growth companies, and these are companies that have things moving, they have traffic increases year over year, they have rank increases month over month and year over year. When they look to publish a new page, it takes them about 2 weeks, right, to get from A to Z, which is still not the ideal amount of time, but that's pretty good for a large organization, right? Or really any organization. Flat growth, 2 months, right? And the difference here is that we're talking weeks versus months here, right? And that's something to really pay attention to. And is this you? Which bucket do you fall into? What about changing a title tag on the site? High growth should take about 3 days because, again, there's a lot of compliance for bigger companies and things of that nature. But even for smaller companies, it's just, hey, just getting it done, right? Flat growth, 8 weeks. So now what are you talking about? To make a simple change on your site, you're talking about days versus weeks. If you fall into that latter bucket where it's taking you weeks to update a title tag, something is very, very wrong with your program, right? What about changing a meta description? Very similar to changing a title tag, right? Either 4 days and then also 6 weeks. So something like that. Again, days versus weeks. So from that standpoint, definitely, like, what are we really talking about? It's about time frames, right? It's like it's either weeks versus months or days versus weeks or days versus months, and that's a lot of what I hear. It's like, well, our process is really long. There's a lot of steps. There's a lot of approvals. And, a lot of that, you really just have to kind of think about that and say, hey, what's happening here? And that's what sometimes I go into companies, I'm like, what is happening here? Why is everything taking so long to do these very simple things, right? And one of our newer customers, a new Fortune 500 customer came to, I was on the phone with them a couple of weeks ago, and they said, hey, it takes us 6 months to update a title tag. 6 months to update a title tag. That is insanity. That is an eternity, everybody. And these are the problems that exist within companies. And again, I mainly work with large enterprise companies, but at the end of the day, this exists across all companies, small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses. I see these problems everywhere, and it's really painful to watch. And I see someone just said, wow, that's painful. It is very, very painful. And I feel for the people on the other end that I'm working with that are working against this, right? It's like working against it's just working against a brick wall. But, from there, what do you have to do, right? And